Welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce podcast, episode number 64. I'm your host, Leanne Linsky.
Changing it up a little bit there, aren't you? I'm the boyfriend.
Yes. Hey, welcome back to another wonderful week of divorce. We are revved up and ready to go, kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
The boyfriend has a cold, you guys.
A little bit of a head cold today, so you have to just deal with it.
Yep, he's just dealing with it. So, yeah, while you're out there tuning in, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. Send the boyfriend some love and soup and Kleenex.
Any and all would be appreciated.
Maybe some NyQuil. Yep. So, hey, welcome back. Like I said, rate, review, and subscribe. Check out the website. Mom Anonymous had a really fun blog last week. Last week, we talked all about deal breakers, and Mom Anonymous shared with us some of her deal breakers.
Yeah, a lot of older people are still trying to get still trying to make relationships work or get into relationships. And there are some interesting deal breakers for older people. It changes as you get older.
There's some fun ones in there.
Yeah.
I got to give credit to Mom Anonymous. Don't be cleaning your dentures, you guys, at the table. That's a big no-no. Something I wouldn't have thought of. So I appreciate her for pointing that out. You know, we also had some comments and feedback. Yeah, I gotta say, we weren't on social media a lot this week because, well, you know, life happens, you guys. And social media is just always, I don't know. Sometimes I think when life happens, there are the people who are always on it. And then there are those of us who just kind of like drift away because we're dealing with life. But I found it interesting on the what are your deal breakers question from last episode. We had a couple of comments on there. Deal breakers consisted of gaslighting and general emotional manipulation. I would say those are definitely deal breakers, Chris Robinson. And then soon to be single said lying and disrespect. Also 2 deal breakers on our list.
Definitely.
Yeah.
If you don't have any trust in a relationship, as we said last week, there's no relationship.
Yeah, right? There's none. We also had a couple from Facebook as well, and I'm flipping over to Facebook right now to come up with those. Click. Facebook alert. Here we go. Let's see. Those were off Instagram. Boyfriend, tap dance for a second.
Funny.
Here we go. Jennifer Foster Lester, she added on our Facebook one, abuse, lying, cheating, disrespecting me or my family. Those are all definitely big.
Well, that's interesting because I hear things about my family doesn't like him or my family doesn't like her and she doesn't like the family. And that's a deal breaker for her. Some people will just force everybody to get along because I really care for this other individual. But no, that's a deal breaker. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess, like, boy, if you come into a relationship and you got some problems with his or her family, you could be out.
Could be.
You could.
Some people think that's a deal breaker. Some people don't. So I think that's interesting.
Well, maybe you could have issues with them, but when you start disrespecting or bad mouthing or creating problems,
that would be definitely crossing the line.
I would say so,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You don't need that kind of headache in your life. So thanks for everybody for sharing on social media. And, you know, speaking of us not being on there because life gets lifey, we've had a lot going on, which leads me into today's discussion because as I look back on my divorces and boyfriend, maybe when you look back on some of your big breakups, doesn't it seem like when it rains, it pours? You know, when you're going through it, it seems like everything else just seems to fall apart.
It does. However, when looking back on it in hindsight, it's just like that event magnified everything else that happened in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe like when you start, you know, it's like a project when you start cleaning house, you're like, oh, I'm just going to clean out this drawer. And pretty soon the whole room is turned upside down because you get into this whole process. I feel like that's kind of what divorce does, is it kind of opens that door and all of a sudden you're in the midst of changing everything.
Well, I could see that because you're basically changing your life. So you go in, there's a good analogy, going into the room and you're trying to clean up a little bit, but for some reason, everything needs to change. And then that's sort of what happens in a divorce, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think you nailed it. Is normally I would just look at it as like, I'm cleaning a house. It's spring, But during a time of divorce, it's like, oh my gosh, the world, the sky is falling and everything is just falling in my lap. And there's all of these things to deal with. And it can seem overwhelming. And yesterday, speaking of the word overwhelm, I happened to read this article by Ramit Sethi. I don't know, boyfriend. I think I've shared some of his articles with you. Anyway, he's written a book, I Will Teach You How to Be Rich. And I'm on his email list. And one of the topics that came across his email yesterday was overwhelm. And he said, one of the things you'll never hear successful people talk about is how they feel overwhelmed. They may say, I'm super busy right now, things are crazy, or something like that. He goes, but a feeling of overwhelm is different, where you're kind of like floundering and not really sure of what to do or where to go. But what he says is what happens is successful people come up with a plan.
Yep.
No matter if that plan is going to work or not, but they have a plan that they start taking action towards. And he goes, and that's where everything just turns on its head. It changes everything. It's a game changer.
Changes that feeling of overwhelm, because I could see it overwhelming. You're just, I don't know what to do. I got all these things to do, and you're just stuck. But people who make a plan says, all right, I'm getting A done, I'm getting B done, I'm getting C done. And then they go through the list and get things done. And it's a different, since it is a plan of action, it's a different mindset for that feeling. And that's sort of, I think, what you mean by turning it over on its head, because no longer do you feel like I can't get any of this done. You're like, you compartmentalize almost and be like, I'm going to get one done, and then I'll move on to the next one, and then I'll move on to the next one. And yeah, you're right. Most people don't have plans that they know work for sure, but they put something in action to be able to make it work, to make it happen.
Yeah. And I thought that article was so interesting, and what a great point it was, because when we're going through a divorce and all those things start coming at us really quickly, and we realize we're in the midst of this big overhaul of our lives, we can get caught into that trap of feeling overwhelmed, and we can end up repeating our story over and over of like, this is what's happening to me. This is what's going on. Why do these things keep happening to me? And in order to change our narrative, we have to have a plan. We have to take action. And all of a sudden it just changes the direction of our mindset.
Was that because you take control of it now instead of letting things push you?
Yeah, I think having a plan takes us out of victim mode.
Ah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big difference. And, it's funny because you and I, boyfriend, in this past couple of months, it's kind of like things were cooking along, we have life happening, we have our things and we're working on. And then all of a sudden, things out of our control, outside things start happening within our lives that affect our lives. And then all of a sudden so it's like, okay, we'll handle this. But all of a sudden when one things happen, they like seem to come in threes or tens or a lot of things. So for instance, I just want to break it down, because although that we're not going through a divorce or a breakup or something at this time, I want to remind our listeners that yes, this stuff happens during divorce and it seems like everything, but this also happens at different points in our life when we have to like step back and remind ourselves like, wow, it's really not that bad, because let me start at the beginning.
Well, it's maybe not that bad. That may trivialize it a little bit, because it is bad. You've got things you got emotions and you got feelings that are occurring, and you don't want to diminish those. But in order to help heal those emotions, taking control of your life and moving forward can be
liberating.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So let me go back to when I went through my first divorce. And when I was doing that, one of the things that happens, okay, so my spouse and I decided to call it quits. The next thing that happens is now I have to move. And then that's a whole other change. That's not breaking up, but now I have to move and dividing things up and finding a place to live and going through that, and then the grief. And then The next thing you know, I total my car. So then there's this accident.
And you did do that, right?
I did do that. Yeah. And then I totaled my car. And then
that happened. Put it that way. Yeah.
And then from there, I know there were a bunch of other things, then there were maybe some smaller things that came up at the time. And it just seemed like all of a sudden everything, right? Like, okay, so now my car, and now I think it was everything except my job was shifting and changing in my life. And what I realized is, well, first things first. Well, number one, I have to find a place to move. And by having to take those actions and finding a place and then lining up a moving truck and, doing those things and then getting my car fixed, even though those things seem like such a pain at the time, those were such good things to have because it forced me to take action and to keep moving forward. And I find that even though like now we're not going through a major...
Well, hold on, go back to that. So how did you put yourself in a position to take action? Because some people can't or feel that they can't. This is really hard. I don't want to do this. I don't know what to do. And they never make that step into being like, all right, I've got to move. I've got to do this and start planning it out and finding places and dealing with the cars and dealing with everything else. How did you make that? How did you make the turn to say, okay, I'm no longer going to just sit around, no longer going to mope anymore. I'm no longer going to be mad at this. I'm going to take action. Because I think people agree with us that, action is a big thing. But how do you get to the point where you just said, F it, I'm going to go do it?
Yeah. Let me think. That is so long ago. Because that's a really good question. I don't know that I ever wanted to just sit and be with it as it was, because I knew where I was at that time wasn't a good place. Like it wasn't a happy place. The other thing I think that helped me considerably were the people that I was surrounded by.
Ah, yes.
And I think that makes a difference. I was not in a place of isolation. I'm a very social person. I'm very outgoing. I usually have a lot of friends, not of late, but normally. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. My friends that I was surrounded by at that time are they're go-getters. They're you know what? They're not the type of, none of my friends then were the type of people to sit around playing victim. None of them were to sit around feeling sorry for themselves. They're like, you know what? Pull up your big girl pants, start packing up your boxes, start getting things together. Like you've made a decision. Now you need to take the action that supports it. And that's the only way that it's going to move forward. And even today, I'm very fortunate that I surround myself with people who they're honest enough with me that they're not going to enable me. They support me. And I think there's a difference.
There's a huge difference in having a group of people, a support system around you, help you get through these times, whatever it is incredibly important. There's a lot of cliches here, but no one can do it alone. You take the reins, you make it happen, but you need people behind you in some sort of support role to allow you to be who you are and to be successful.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. I've been through many things in my life where I know I wouldn't have made it through without a support system. So, yeah.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference. And I think having that support system, those are the people who helped really drive my own action plan, because because that was so long ago, it's hard for me to sit here and go, this is exactly how I was feeling and this is that. So I can apply that more like today. And so going back to what I was going to say is like, although you and I aren't going through a breakup or anything of that sort, I do feel that life has a funny way of things happening at the same time, So, as of the past few months, I've had a lot of things going on externally, like with friends and things like that have affected me emotionally because I care about my inner circle and those around me. But also as a result, then other things that are happening in my life specifically to me seem more magnified, right? So I'll give a couple examples because I was in a car accident a couple of weeks ago.
She's fine, ladies and
I'm
gentlemen.
fine. Car not so fine, but car is better. Car is better. So, but I was in a car accident. Thank goodness I'm okay. Okay, the first things first, get the car taken care of, get those things taken care of and all of that. But then other things happen, like we have an illness or I have, other health issues to be taken care of. But it seems like it doesn't happen all spaced out, that it fits in your schedule and that it's convenient. Things kind of clump up and are all on top of each other, and then like your car gets broken into. And then, it's little things that aren't really big deal. Everything is very manageable. But that's why I was thinking about when we were talking about, when it rains, it pours. It seems like things kind of happen all at once, and it forces us to suddenly realize we have to take action. Maybe we're becoming complacent in our routine, or, things go along smoothly. Life just doesn't go along smoothly forever. Things are going to come up and things are going to happen. But even though these things are annoying and they seem to inconvenience us and get us in that place of what is happening? Why are all these things going on? I think the key thing is to remember not asking why are these things happening, because I think why is a big victim language, why is this happening to me kind of thing, and instead go, okay, these things are happening. I acknowledge that. What plan do I need to come up with? What plans of action do I need? What action do I need to take to continue moving forward? And I think that's the shift, that the same thing of going through divorce, when all these big things are happening in life, is those key words we ask ourselves, instead of asking why, saying what? What do I need to do next?
Well, I think, like you said, successful people, that's what they do. What do I need to do next? I'm busy. They have their plan. They're enacting their plan. They're not asking why. They're not saying, why are all these things happening now? They're just doing it.
Right.
And if you take control or take charge of your own, not control, but if you take charge of your own life, when all of these things happen, you're probably going to come out a little better. At least feeling better about it. There's no right way to do it, but at least you're doing something.
Right. And I think it's really important too, because I don't know, I see these memes come across when I am on social media where I know boyfriend's rolling his eyes. He is not on the internet. Okay. But when I see these things come across, it's people saying I will not let divorce define me. Divorce does not define who I am, but how I handle it is the difference.
Yeah.
It's what I do with that information and how I move forward. And I think we can apply that to any time in our life when things, get challenging and life throw some game-changing moves out there where it's hey, I wasn't expecting that. Now what? What's next? How do I change my course? Where do we go from here? Instead of doing that. And that's one of the things that I just kind of want to address, because it's been a long time since I've gone through my divorce, but I feel like life kind of throws me those reminders every now and then of that feeling.
Yeah, but I can imagine, well, right now, a lot of things have been thrown at you and at us the past 6 months or so. The differences, or these are all independent things of each other, and they just added up. With the divorce, and I'll ask you again, there's an incredible amount of emotional baggage that goes along with it, and that's probably a bad word to say too, but there's feelings involved, and when feelings get involved, I think that's the biggest microscope you got, biggest magnifying lens you got, because then when you have all these feelings you don't know what to do with and can't control, and then everything else happens at the same time, that magnifies it and makes it unbearable, unmanageable.
So much more dramatic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah. It's very, 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 very true. And I think in those times, that's when it goes back to where we've talked before about where you go, you know what? I need a timeout. where do I put that on my game plan? Where do I put that on my action list? I need to take some time out and just be alone and be with my emotions and let myself feel those things. Like giving ourselves time and permission to feel those things, whether it's sitting at home with some Haagen-Dazs ice cream and watching some movies and just, giving a good cry. Or maybe it's going out with friends for some wild night, and just cutting loose.
Well, that's what you see in the movies. These wild night right? girls where I don't want to think about him. I don't want to do anything about it. We're just having fun tonight. Yeah.
But at some point we have to face the music. We have to confront those things. And I think that's something that we put on our action plan of like, all right, I know I have to go get my car fixed. I know I need to go find a place. And okay, if I go spend an afternoon looking for apartments or a new home, then tonight it's me and my favorite, takeout, and I'm staying in, and I'm just gonna let myself be sad or something. But I think those things also have to be included in the action plan of like giving ourselves permission.
Yeah, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
That's hard to include because you don't want to think about that. That's not typically a task that needs to be dealt with. Like, all right, I need to deal with the paperwork from the lawyer. I need to deal with this. I need to take care of this.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to take care of my emotions. That's not something that you typically put on the list.
Right. And I feel like that's the thing about, we get so caught up and it's important to find things that we have to do to take action to move forward. I think that's important. But everything can't be just a task where we cross it off the list and we're like, okay, check, that's done. We have to allow some time for growth,
That's the difference between a guy and a girl. We're tasks, done, check, check.
Compartmentalize and you're very linear thinking. But there has to be some time for growth in there. And so when we are like, okay, well, I made the decision and I'm getting a divorce or we're going through this breakup. Here's the things I know that have to be done to make the change. But then there's those non-tangible things that also have to be done to help us move forward. And I think being aware of that makes your plan all that much stronger. Right?
Sure. That's the girl part of it.
The boyfriend's looking at me like, I think you're bananas.
Well, again, back to the male version, we check things off. And once we're all done with our list, good, we're accomplished. And you know what? I feel like I've grown through that. Great. and I don't have to put any time for it. It just happens.
Well, let me ask you this then. So anytime when you've gone through a break, your serious breakup, like a divorce and anything, like maybe part of putting those things on the list is going to therapy or finding someone to coach you through it. Would that be part of your list where it's like, okay, I had that appointment today, check?
Again, I'm not going to speak for every guy out there, but I think most of us see the tangible things that we've got to take care of.
Yeah.
As moving, lawyers, this, that, whatever else. All that's done. I meet all those tangible things. The taking care of myself just happens as I get my work accomplished.
Okay.
And yes, some people do go find and seek out counseling and help, but I don't know. I don't have any data to support this, but I'd guess most of the guys don't.
Probably not as much as probably.
Yeah, I think it's less than what a woman would go through, or what a woman would put on her plate in order to make sure she gets through this. A lot of women would go see therapists or counselors. Yes,
I don't know. I'm thinking about people I know, and I think it. I don't want to make a generalization like that with gender because I think that times have changed. I think.
No, I agree, but we're old, so.
I definitely think 20 years ago that may have been different, but I don't know that nowadays that's so different.
And I'll agree with that.
I think people are definitely more in touch and more open with their feelings today than they were, at the time probably of my divorce. But Yeah, I think that that's part of the action is like giving yourself permission. I don't know. Have you ever like been really angry about something? I've actually set my kitchen timer and I'm like, I have 20 minutes to be angry about this and then I just have to stop.
No.
I've tried that. Someone suggested that once. It's actually pretty good. It's like, okay, well, we're done there.
That's an interesting action plan.
Yeah. It's like, I'm gonna only, because think about it. Like some things, they're not worth that amount of time that we spend maybe obsessing or thinking or dwelling upon something. They're just not worth it. They're small things. So it's like, okay, well, I feel this way. Okay, we'll honor that. But you only get 10 minutes because it's not worth more than that. Now move on.
I think that's a good point. It's not worth more than that.
Yeah.
Put in what you need to, get it done, get it out of your system and move on.
Right. And then I also heard, when it comes to smaller breakups too, is like never spend more, I don't remember who said this, but never spend more time grieving about the guy than you actually spent with him.
No, I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Like there's a ratio for if you've been with someone for this long, you're only allowed to grieve for this much.
Yeah.
And then you're done.
Right.
Yep.
So set that little egg timer, you guys. Or put that on your action plan, 20 minutes a day, you get a chance to think about it. Everything else, it's about you now,
And that's a great way to look at it. Start putting the focus back on you, taking care of the things that you need to take care of to move your life forward.
Yeah. So when you think that life is getting a little too lifey, and before you fall into that place of overwhelm or victim mode, remind yourself like, hey, here's an opportunity. I don't want divorce to define me. Instead, I want how I handle it to define me.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? What's your plan? So that's what I'm thinking of this week is like, how do I move forward? Anything else, boyfriend?
No, the boyfriend wants to go blow his nose.
All right, you guys, send some tissues and NyQuil over to the boyfriend this week, and hopefully we'll be feeling better and be able to post some more and interact with you more on social media. And we'll see you next episode. In the meantime, have another wonderful week of divorce.